Hi, the next topic is lists and data frames. So lists are objects which includes multiple objects. For example, a list can be made up of one character vector, one numeric vector, and one matrix. And the data frame is a special case of the list. We discuss it later. Okay, we start with an example. So suppose we have multiple information, such as the instructor's name of a course and the time of the course. And suppose that this time is given by the 3x2 numeric matrix, whose rows represents the day of the week, and the columns represents the start time and end time. And if you want to include these two information in one place, then you can define a list. So the format is this. So list function we have. So list function of the instructor, this is the name of the object inside the list, and that equals this. So we defined INSD. So this is the content of this. And the second object within this list is lec time, and which is equal to time. So we defined the matrix time. So we plug in this time. Then this STA 6840 becomes a list in R. So what's the content? We can check by this. So the stat 6840 includes two objects, and whose first object is the instructor's name, and the second object is the lecture time. So yeah, and we can access to specific information by using the dollar symbol. So if you want access to this matrix, then you can type STA 6840 and lec time. Okay, so this way. So it sounds that the second line is the incorrect, because this should be the 12 p.m. and this should be the 13:00. So if you want to change it, you can access to this by specifying rows and columns. So this is the second row and the both columns. So this, so you can change this into this way. Then STA 6840 becomes this. So this is how to handle the list. Also, you can access the object by specifying the bracket. So STA, the 6840 bracket 2, this is the second object within the list stat 6840. So you can do this. But actually, this includes this name information. So you cannot really access to the specific observations here. So if you type 1, 2, then actually it returns error. So to access to each element, you have to specify in this way. So double bracket, then this name information has been dropped. So this object is recognized as a matrix. Then you specify the element. Then we can do this. And actually, many of the R function outputs are objects. So we will see the one example here. So suppose we have the midterm 1 and the midterm scores for 5 students, and we want to see if the difference mid2 minus mid1 is significantly different from 0 on average. Then last time we used the t.test function, but actually this output looks like just some explanation, but this is actually a list, and the list consists of several objects. And if, okay, so for convenience, we name this as the capital TT, then actually the first object within the list TT is statistic, T statistic. So you can access to T statistic here by the TT, the bracket 1. And TT bracket 2 is the degrees of freedom. TT3 is p-value. TT4 is confidence interval, and TT5 mean of x, and so on. So actually, this output is a list. So in practice, you want to use the output of some function in as another input in another function. So in such a case, that you have to recognize that this output is a list, and you can extract almost everything. Okay, so next, the data frames. So data frames are a special case of list, but it looks like a matrix. So suppose that we have this kind of data. So the gender of the 4 patients, and height of the 4 patients, and weight of those patients. So we have the 3 variables for 4 patients, and that's we cannot make a matrix out of this. So this basically is can be included in the 4x3 matrix, but actually the first one, so gender, is character vector, so it cannot be in numeric matrix. So data frame can handle this kind of data set, which includes both character vectors or factor vectors and the numeric vectors. So how to combine these? Actually, we can create a list whose first object is gender, second object is height, and third object is weight. So we can declare the data frame by data.frame function, then gender and height and weight. Then so D is a data frame. So it looks like a matrix, but actually I recognize this as a list. So if you want to access to this 160, you can type D height and the second element, so 160. So we have to be careful that, for example, if we change this into 160.1, then D becomes this, but the original vector we created just remains the same. So actually, we have the duplication. We define the gender, and we define height, we define weight, and we define D. And D is defined by this. But now that we have these 3 vectors and another data frame. So to avoid confusion, we should eliminate these 3 before starting to use this D. So the good fashion is that you eliminate these objects. Still, the D exists. Okay, so this is how to handle the data frame.